What's up, guys? I'm out here I'm like house sitting and dog sitting for Issa's aunt right now in the neighborhood of Queen Anne, Washington, or Queen Anne, Seattle. And it's a neighborhood here, very residential neighborhood. So let's check it out. It's interesting coming from a suburban setting. It's very odd to think about like residential neighborhoods in cities. Like this is a residential neighborhood, but it's still in Seattle. Like this is Seattle. But I really think about like downtown Seattle or the Space Needle, Seattle Center, you know, but this is like a neighborhood. And there's something just different about a city neighborhood versus like a suburban neighborhood. Suburban seems much more like planned, you know, it's like the neighborhood has a name and all that stuff. Now this has a name, but it's like that's the regional name. Well, like each street's kind of like its own neighborhood, you know? It's not like an actual like this is Meadowleaf. And it's crazy because like a lot of these houses were built in like the 1910s, 1920s. And they're still out here, but it's weird because it's like the houses are still here, but it's like they're with the modern times, or they have failed to adapt to the modern times. Like this right here, this is a two-way street, but you got cars parked on both sides. So like if you see a car on the other end, you're like, oh no. And I feel like that's partly because like a lot of these garages were meant to be like one-car garages. You know, back in the day, like, oh, the family, they have one car, you know, but now it's like they have two cars. Maybe like a kid has a car, they have three cars, so they gotta park them on the street. And the cars also seem, I don't know, maybe a little bigger than they used to be. I don't know if that's actually true, but I guess back in the 1920s, there weren't like these big SUVs all over the place either. So they probably are bigger on average. Queen Anne Ave. This is like the main commercial area of Queen Anne. You know, it's the main Ave. You know, they got a Safeway. And it's pretty happening. Some lady came up to me. She's like, do you want to fund this thing? And then I was like, oh, I'm 22. And she's like, oh, we only take 25 and older. You got a baby face. And I was like, a little farther up Queen Anne Avenue, we have these giant radio towers right here. And I think it's because, sorry, that person's car was really loud. Anyway, I think it was because like the first radio station in Seattle was built here on Queen Anne. I forgot the name of it, but it makes sense. I mean, it's on the hill, you know, can radiate to the distances. Oh my, I think we have just stumbled upon St. Anne's School, which I believe is where Issa's aunt and her sisters went to school back in like, what, the 1950s? Yeah, it's still here. Another interesting thing about Seattle and like just city residential areas in general is like we're passing by these like older looking houses, boom boom boom. What is that? Like you'll just be passing by these historic buildings and then all of a sudden you see this modern, like, you know, like the square shape. It's like, whoa, wait, where did this come from, you know? One of the most famous areas of Queen Anne is right here, Cary Park, where you get this fantastic view of the skyline of Seattle. I feel like if you look up Seattle, like this is usually what the picture looks like, is like the Space Needle. Usually Rainier's out there, but not today, it's too cloudy. But it's a fantastic view of the skyline. Great. I really like the way this tree looks in comparison to this house. You know, just so Winnie the Pooh vibe. Here at the Betty Bowen viewpoint, we get a great view across the Puget Sound to the islands out there, the Olympic Peninsula. Actually, the Kitsap Peninsula is what it's officially called. And you can walk along this nice walk. You can see the Puget Sound once again. You got this nice little rail. It's so like rustic, you know? And you got these light posts too. It just feels like you're in France or something. And there's this interesting little pathway here going up these stairs. Let's see where it leads to. It just led me to the street next to the other street. But you know, it did lead me uphill. And in case you're wondering, Queen Anne is in fact named after Queen Anne of England. You know, she's the character from The Favourite with Emma Stone and Olivia Colman. She's like the queen, that's Queen Anne. But it wasn't named directly after Queen Anne. It was just named that, I believe, because like the first homes on it were kind of fancy. So they're like, oh, it's like Queen Anne, you know? But it's weird to think that like, when Seattle was first developing, like Queen Anne, this is one of the first like neighborhoods that developed. So like when people would just kind of work in the city, live right up on Queen Anne, you know? But now like as this expanded, Queen Anne's like really close to the city relative to, you know, everything else, like Sammamish. Think about the whole Seattle metropolitan area. We've got another box house being built right here. And what's interesting about the box houses is that like Queen Anne used to be the neighborhood right next to Seattle, right? So that was like the original neighborhood. People began to move out. They're like, oh, it's too crowded here. We got another box house. So then they started moving to the suburbs, you know, Issaquah, Sammamish, even like Bothell, stuff like that. But then now, like, it's almost like those areas, they're like, oh, it's too crowded here. So now some people are moving back into the city, building the box houses, and now it's like, whoa, like it's like a whole reversal over the last century. Now this house looks like Despicable Me. I like that. So yeah, today was interesting. We got to explore Queen Anne a little bit, which I hadn't seen, really much of. So that was pretty cool. And like, it's pretty nice neighborhood, it's very quiet, very residential, city residential, two-way streets, watch out. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed my walk today. I really did. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.